Hello everyone, and welcome to this third episode of the Fair Food Forum event series. What is urban food growing good for? Brighton and Hove has inspired this series with work that contributed to it becoming the first gold sustainable food place in the UK. Each event highlights people working with Brighton and Hove's community and social enterprise food sector and discusses opportunities, challenges and solutions, and connects you all. Please make short use of the live chat to comment and ask questions. On today's show, we are asking, what is urban food growing good for? We know that food grown in the city has been important in the pandemic, and we also know that the act of food growing has other benefits. We know that much food is wasted and some farming practices are beneficial to the environment. I'm delighted to introduce to you today Mark Carroll from Brighton and Hove Allotments Federation, Bryn Thomas from Brighton Permaculture Trust, Jess Bayley from the Centre for Ecotherapy, and Rosie Linford from the Gleaning network. So let's meet everyone. Mark Carroll is chair of Brighton and Hove Allotments Federation, representing 5,000 growers at 3,000 plots across 40 allotment sites. Welcome, Mark. Tell us about the work you've been doing during the pandemic and the part that allotments have played.
Well, for most people with allotments, I think you'll find that many of them will say that they were an absolute lifesaver during the pandemic. Having a space outside where you could go for physical exercise and for the benefit of your mental health was, invaluable to loads of people who had allotments. And we got a lot of people looking over the fences when they were doing their daily exercise, jealously eyeing up people on their plots, and we had a massive surge in people applying for allotments over the last year. In the region of probably about 700 to 1,000 people have joined the waiting list as people, realised how valuable they were during the pandemic. And anyway, there's been a massive resurgence in the interest in allotments over the past few years. Anyway, and our job as BAF is to represent the views of those people and the people on the waiting list to the council, represent them, and work with the council to implement the allotment strategy that we produced back in 2014, which is still an ongoing project, which we hope opens up the allotments to many more people, makes it more inclusive, diverse, and gives a certain amount of responsibility back to plot holders and the sites themselves. So yeah, that's a basic outline of our work.
Thank you, Mark. Good to hear, and wonderful to see that so many people have signed up for plots, but a shame there's such a long waiting list.
That is a shame.
Let's meet Bryn. Bryn Thomas has been teaching permaculture since 1994 and is one of the founders of Brighton Permaculture Trust, which promotes greener lifestyles and sustainable development through design with courses, events and projects. Welcome, Bryn. Tell us about the work you and colleagues at the Permaculture Trust have been doing during COVID.
Well, yeah, Brighton Permaculture Trust is all about inspiring, connecting and learning for people, for the benefit of the people and the planet. And well, things have changed a bit. We've got a program of courses and events, which normally happen. Some of those have gone online, some have been cancelled, and there's a lot of pent-up demand for those once we're out of lockdown again. So we'll be running courses. So those courses are in permaculture design, they're in things relating to fruit growing, and they're in things relating to green buildings. Fruit growing and gardening, I should say. So focusing, since we're talking about urban growing, on the fruit growing aspect of our work, we've worked with schools and communities to plant over 140 small orchards across Sussex over the last few years, and we've planted over 100 fruit trees in urban environments this winter, or we're still planting them. The last ones are going in the ground this coming week. So that's working with communities in the sort of spaces that you saw. and most recently been working in urban environments a lot. So another project we've got takes fruit that would otherwise go to waste. And this winter or this season from last summer through to now, we've collected about 30.5 tons. Here it's been juiced with children, and we do it on a slightly larger scale. And most of that fruit is made into juice and cider, mostly juice. And basically, we've supplied some of it to Fair Share. I'm trying to remember the figure. I think it's about to flash up on the screen in front of me, about 8,000 bottles, 8,308 bottles of juice to Fair Share to distribute to people in needs during the pandemic, something we hadn't done before, something our members and supporters have helped us do, and some various funding streams, including Infinity Foods and the Council and Sussex Community Foundation. But the majority of our juice and cider we supply to the public at Stanmer, where we make it publicly outside our fruit factory.
Thanks, Bryn.
So, yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Thanks, Bryn. I've had some of that juice myself on walks at Stanmer Park. So yeah, keep it up. Thank you. Let's meet Jess now from the Centre for Ecotherapy. Jess Bayley founded the Centre for Ecotherapy in 2014, bringing social and therapeutic horticulture and ecotherapy to the local community. Their work uses food growing as a form of therapy through which to address issues of social isolation, mental and physical health issues. Welcome to you, Jess. Tell us about the work you did during the pandemic and the need for your services.
Hi, Rebecca, and thanks for having me on the show. It's really nice to be able to talk about the work we do on such a forum. Let me just apologise. I'm in my car and the connection is good, but there might be a bit of background noise, so I do apologise for that. Yeah, we have been working all the way through the pandemic. We consider what we do, social and therapeutic horticulture, as extremely important in this time, particularly in such a time as when isolation has grown and grown. I've spent much of the last 7 years combating isolation in the sense of applying for grants to keep our work running on the back of the fact that isolation is so destructive for so many people. And to arrive in a situation like we all have a year ago, where isolation was being pushed and demanded of people, has been a real trial, a real struggle for many people. So as a support group, we have been able to keep running throughout lockdown, and we have determined to maintain our support of the community in whatever way we can. With that in mind, the numbers haven't been huge because people obviously have been concerned about coming out under the the strictures of the government guidelines. Nevertheless, we have remained open, and our support system is functioning very well. So we grow food in an allotment and encourage the social participation in that, because people who are isolated, they struggle in many ways, and coming out into a garden gives many benefits. A particular benefit that we hear from many people is that they feel like they're a gardener and not somebody with bipolar, schizophrenia or PTSD. It really counters the sort of debilitating effects of what a diagnosis means for people individually. They become somebody who's just going to a group, who's just gardening, and there's the informality of having fun with one another, obviously creating something, nurturing something, seeing something grow and come to fruition. And then in this particular photo, as you can see, is the wonderful aspect of creating lovely meals, colourful meals with fantastic fresh produce that we grow right there and then. So people are picking food and producing lovely meals, in sort of that direct fashion. As you can see from this fantastic photograph, the diversity we can offer. Photograph is from prior to lockdown. We have not been dealing with the same numbers, as we haven't been able to maintain, social distancing has meant that we've had to have much fewer numbers on the plot. But you can see from this photograph that the diversity of people and the conversations that are going on, the life, the passion, and the coming together with a common purpose, which is to grow food. So from my point of view, urban food growing is an essential aspect of community life, and we should be doing more and more of it.
Thank you, Jess. Wonderful. That last photo really told the story.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We're now going to hear from Rosie. Rosie Linford is the Sussex Gleaning Coordinator. Last year, over 22 tonnes of surplus food was rescued from local farms and distributed to people in need across Brighton and in East and West Sussex, London and Kent. Welcome, Rosie. Tell us about what you did during the pandemic and how the Gleaning network has benefited people. And what is Gleaning anyway?
That's a very common question. People often mishear it and think we're talking about cleaning with a C, and we have to say no, Gleaning with a G. It's a really old term, and it's basically where a farmer has surplus produce that they can't sell for whatever reason. Often it's the wrong shape, size, colour, there's been a glut, it's too sparsely laid out in the field to be economical to harvest, a shortage of pickers, all kinds of reasons. So therefore you have a farm with, whether it's apples, potatoes, leeks, cherries, that are perfectly good to eat, and they can't be sold to supermarkets. So we have an arrangement with farmers where I take a group of volunteers to the farm, we pick the produce and then help to redistribute it to local charities. Often that gets sent out via Fair Share, but we can do individual drops as well to food banks and charities that are making meals and food parcels to families as well. I started in August last year, and I was told that by my predecessor that we had that the demand for gleaning was much higher during the pandemic last year than before, and obviously we had to take smaller numbers of groups, smaller numbers of people in the group, so we had constantly had to be turning people away, which was really disappointing for them, particularly those that live in the city and often weren't able to get out into green spaces. So on the second photo that flashed up, I don't know if it's possible to get that. That's the one. We did a pumpkin harvest. This young lad here in the picture was from a local youth group in Shoreham that worked with disadvantaged young people, and they came out to Poynings pumpkin patch as a pick your own place, so not far at all. And after Halloween, the demand for pumpkins just completely crashes, and there were tons and tons and tons left in this field. So this lovely chap and lots of his peers came and helped us pick nearly a ton of pumpkins. They got to take some home. We got to do some cooking with them. We had a little pop-up kitchen on the farm, and they got to eat pumpkins that they'd never tried before. And it was a really nice experience to get young people out to the farms, where to give them a better understanding of where their food comes from and the scale of it all, and helping them to sort of get their head around a bit of the concept of food waste. And of course, young people that have disadvantaged backgrounds are going to really, really benefit from a day out in nature, in the fresh air, working together as a team, have a sense of achievement at the end of the day. I mean, they were glowing. All of them said, "I'd love to be a farmer. I'd never thought of doing that before." So it's really, really nice to work with small community groups like that. We also ran a group with a Band of Brothers, which is a support group for men who are rehabilitating after having been in prison, and they went out apple gleaning last autumn, and again had a really good day, and all the produce then gets sent on to people in need. Speaking of pumpkins, on the third picture that flashed up, you'll see that was one drop of pumpkins, of which there were two or three van loads of about this volume. So this is part of a project that we are. It's a pilot that we are trialing to process some of the surplus food that is, on our doorsteps. And at a time like just after Halloween, you can't give away pumpkins. The whole system is completely flooded. Same with apples, same with potatoes this time of year. I've got farmers on the phone saying I've got 10 tons of potatoes, and I'm ringing up FareShare saying no, they've got enough that week. So what do we do? So this is a trial which combines making value out of the surplus that we can't give away but is there nonetheless, and to give it life. So we process it to enable it to shelf life, to make it last longer, and can then be frozen, made into soup, stews, hot meals. Some of it can then be sold to generate income for the project. Some of it can be given away. And the really cool thing about this project is that we are working with young people who otherwise would struggle to get into the jobs market. So young people either from disadvantaged backgrounds or those that do have an education and just really struggling to find work at the moment, but they're keen to work, they're keen to change the food system and improve it. So we currently have 3 interns who are working their way through, chopping up about 2 tons of pumpkins, and that is going to be sold under the brand of Sussex Surplus. So at some point you might see this cropping up in independent shops near you, and if you do, please try some and support the project. So yeah, that's what we've been up to during lockdown.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Rosie, and heartening to see that you're also thinking about the financial sustainability of what you're doing and getting some of that produce into shops. Thank you. Really, really inspiring work from you all, actually. In this section of the show, we're going to bring everyone back to hear about challenges and barriers and some of your ideas to clear the way. If you're watching at home, please do send us your ideas and your questions, and we'll do our best to bring those in. So I'm going to go back to Jess to start and ask, in your experience, what are the biggest benefits to urban growing?
Huge benefits all round. Community is massively something that's missing in people who struggle with mental health issues. Isolation through breakdown or loss of a job is really rife. It's really, really common. And with isolation comes this sort of sense that you're not worth anything anymore. If you're not working, you're struggling with mental health issues. There's a huge feeling that you have no value. Getting out onto an allotment or into a growing space where the skills you previously held on to and the characteristics of your life that previously meant so much to you and no longer you have, they're sort of cast aside, and the skills that you bring to that project and to that growing environment are what counts. So people have said to us, it's amazing to be able to share again, and they meant by that to share laughs, to share conversation, to share making a cup of tea for somebody, to share making food for somebody. The very, very common things that we all experience, that a lot of people experience as normal, sharing in a family environment. If you're isolated, those things are very, very special. And an allotment growing project is an incredible, vibrant environment in which those common fundamental human aspects of life are available to you. So I'd say that's massively important to people. Peer group support, peer support, the understanding that while you're not sort of there to discuss your primary issues, in conversation with people, you do learn that other people struggle with the same stuff. You sort of get the sense that you're not alone, and the ability to support one another in the difficulties of daily life is is really strong in such an informal environment. It's not like a therapy session where you're sort of being asked to focus on your issues and bring them out because that's why you're there. You're not there on an allotment growing project to discuss those things, and you never have to discuss any of those things. But if that comes up in conversation, and there's somebody else who's struggling with a similar issue, or there's somebody else who has dealt with those issues previously, then the opportunity to get peer support is second to none. And the relationships that build up and the experience that is shared amongst people in that environment is, it's amazing to watch. I mean, there's many other benefits, but I sort of don't want to take up all the time.
Okay.
Do you want me to carry on?
Well, should we hear from Rosie next?
Yeah, sure. I similar to Jess, I also run a therapeutic community gardening project with my other job at the Food Partnership. But one thing that has in common with Gleaning as well is a real sense of it being a leveller. You've got people working side by side who, whether they're out picking apples in a field or, cooking meal around a fire, that, whatever else is going on in their life isn't like at the front of the focus at that point. What's more important is what they're achieving together. I've had people working side by side from really, really, really diverse backgrounds who never normally would come across each other in their normal lives. I've had people forming friendships and supporting each other. It's really, really nice to see, and I think that is increasingly important right now with everything that's happened with the pandemic. Bryn, I'm sure you might have noticed similar things, picking apples in the fields, in the orchards.
What do you say, Bryn?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Sorry, when I nod, because I've got this neck thing on, I rock from forwards and backwards. Yeah, I mean exactly as Rosie says, people working together, all their big difference in background changes and disappears, and they just focusing on the task in hand whilst having a friendly conversation with the next person. But I think there are plenty of other benefits as well. We tend to ask this question almost with the assumption that we can't grow a significant amount of food in urban environments. But I think that obviously we can't grow all our food in urban environments. But I think we can grow significant amounts of food, particularly high value and fresh and difficult to transport. I think we could probably go 10 to 20% of our fruit needs within the city of Brighton and Hove, for example. So yeah, that's got food with a relatively low environmental impact. So that's lower transport costs, potentially carbon sequestration at the same time, biodiversity benefits from a diverse environment. Not everyone thinks allotments are beautiful, but certainly fruit trees around estates, most people think are an improvement to the environment. Giving access to food for people with low incomes is important as well. But then, as you say, there's the community building, people actually coming together to run projects, community gardens, community orchards and the like, as well as, well, we don't work with people needing additional support needs, but just those general well-being, connections, dealing with self-isolation that people feel. And lastly, I think really important, people just connecting with the growing cycle, growing food leads to people having probably a greater appreciation of food, even if they buy it themselves from the shops. So they probably are making more ethical choices, more informed choices, more healthy choices about the food that they don't grow, as well as what they do grow, being engaged with that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we've got some comments now that might stimulate some more conversation. From Angelina, research at Leeds University has shown that 15% of UK veg needs could be met by urban growing. What do we think about that? and also that I think these community gardens are a great way for bridging the gap, for bridging the social and age gaps, getting experienced people to pass on their skills to another generation. Thanks for that, Charita. That's Mama Cherry there. And from Steve, Cuba is held up as a great example of producing serious amounts of food within the city of Havana. Mind you, the weather is a bit better there. I know, Bryn, you have some experience of Cuba, am I right?
Not direct experience, no. I think we had we hosted a speaker from Cuba, but yes, I don't have direct experience of Cuba myself, no.
That's
but yes, it is part of our inspiration. Particularly around, they grew fruit trees in central reservations and all sorts of things.
I'd just like to read out that the comment from Lisa here, that she agrees. She ran a community garden for 4 years just outside Cardiff, and the volunteers were a huge support for each other. Yeah, Jess.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the comment about different age groups and experience sharing, and I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, is that, you know, when you're getting lots of different people together in a garden environment or a growing environment, the amount of skills that start to come out of people completely sort of naturally, organically, just in the same way as everything grows, you know, in an organic way, is incredible. And you just, if you give people the space to unfurl or to blossom in a way, then the things that they are capable of, that perhaps even they have forgotten, start to sort of emerge too. And you just get the breadth and variety of ability across the community. That's it's a really fascinating process to be part of, and it's enlivening, it's emboldening, and it's enlivening and empowering for people, particularly people, so from my point of view, who have struggled with mental health issues and feel that they've been thrown on the scrap heap of life, to be honest. And they're able to come out with stuff that they used to do. They might have gardening skills from previously, but it's not just about gardening skills. They have skills from all their different work experience and all their different life experience. And all of a sudden, there's an opportunity for those experiences to be brought to the fore, talked about, and even possibly, and certainly at the Centre for Ecotherapy, we try and build our community on the skills of our volunteers and our clients. So, you know, in that way, being able to offer an opportunity for people to live those experiences and skills again.
Thank you, Jess. We have some more comments. One from Steve: we can convert an empty office, the empty office blocks that there will be, as more people keep working from home, into urban salad farms. Excellent.
Great idea.
Look forward to seeing that. And Lisa loves that idea, Steve, and we'll put on future agenda for Edible Cardiff. Watch Cardiff. Some interesting stuff going on there. Brilliant, brilliant. The next question I'd like to ask is, who's missing out, and how do we get them involved? So who would like to start?
Yeah.
Rosie, can I go to you? Yeah.
I've got some thoughts on that. I mean, the obvious answer is, you know, with the pandemic, group sizes had to be reduced, and a lot of our groups we've been running have had to turn people away. We've got waiting lists. But I think because of the pandemic, I know that, you know, we've been talking about it a lot, but the impact on people's mental health it can't be underestimated. And I think going forwards, a lot more people are going to be having anxiety around attending groups, leaving the house, being sociable, and we anticipate a really high demand for all of our therapeutic gardening projects. Dan's going to post a link in a second to the Green Wellbeing Alliance, which is a collection of therapeutic groups in Brighton, using not just gardening but being out in nature as a way to support people's mental health. So I think there is going to be a real need for these services, and a real challenge in helping to bridge the gap between someone who feels quite anxious, or they'd like to leave the house but don't really feel able to. So the other obvious group that are missing out is that we know, again, we've discussed this in the Green Wellbeing Alliance group meetings, that Black and minority ethnic people are really underrepresented in a lot of the groups that we run. Jess, in fact, is leading on a piece of work to see how we can make groups more accessible to BME communities. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how that unfolds. My final thought about who's missing out at the moment is people without cars to be able to get out and about, to come gleaning, or even, you know, sometimes getting up to Stanmer might be a challenge for a lot of people. So it'll be, some of these things don't have easy answers, but it'll be really interesting to see how it unfolds over the year ahead.
Thanks, Rosie. We've got some comments. I'll bring you in a sec, Jess. But we have some comments that are going to pop up on the screen in just a moment. From Lisa. A group I've been supporting in the South Wales Valleys have recently been on the BBC website with this video. It's a lovely example of how community gardening can help with mental health. So there's a link for you. That link will be in the chat, so please have a look at that. Horticultural therapy is more recognised in the States as an effective way to help people with mental health issues. So maybe we've got some work to do here in the UK. And just being able to share stories and life skills helps with all of our mental health issues during these troubling times. So, Jess, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just, in terms of the groups that are missing out, I think it's really, really important to flag up the people who live alone, and whatever age and ethnicity that is, because a lot to do with this pandemic has been focused on, stay at home, work from home, and you meet a lot of people who are really quite comfortable with that. But they quite often, they're people who live with other people. They have somebody else in the house, whether it be a partner or children. And I know that can be very difficult for people as well, but there's not really a flagging up of the amount of people who actually live in isolation just generally. They live alone generally, and with this situation have become even more isolated. So I think, and Rosie's quite right, people are, the anxieties around then coming out into the community and out into the open environment are going to be huge. So I think we have a massive duty to, people in our community who live alone, to support them and encourage them back into general life. And our growing projects, allotmenteering, getting involved with the community group, or coming along through, asking for support through their GP or their mental health practitioner, is really important. Because outside spaces offer a much safer, in inverted commas, environment where one can practice distancing. If that, to make oneself feel safer. So yeah, I would be encouraging anybody who knows anybody who is living alone and isolated to really help them find something in the voluntary sector, in the community, to get involved with in an outdoor project.
Thanks, Jess. Can I bring Mark or Bryn in?
Yeah, well, the waiting list for allotments is testament to how popular they are and how many people out there want to get involved with growing. Like I say, we've had over probably nearly 1,000 people sign up just in the last year, and that's on top of a waiting list that was already at least 1,000 deep. So we're probably looking at 2,000 people wanting to grow their own food. And we're trying to encourage co-working, and also, so people to get onto plots to help people who've already got plots that maybe aren't using them as well as they might be, and community plots as well, to get more people on. So we are supporting community plots on allotments, along with people like the Food Partnership. And allotments have become much more of a community-based enterprise lately as well. Like, we've been supporting allotment associations, so we've already we formed 2 or 3 new allotment associations across the city in the past couple of years, which are doing great work, absolutely great work in taking over some of the management of the site and just in bringing people together. We've also been encouraging people. Like last year, we did this grower row for the Real Junk Food project, which was quite successful. So people would actually plant up a whole row specifically to donate to the junk food project. That seemed to get a lot of food donated. And BAF have also funded a community kitchen in the Weald, where we bought them a fridge, a community fridge, a cooker, and so they've got an open fridge there where people can come, not just from the allotments, but from the local community, can actually go in and take food for free. Seems to have been a massive success. So that wanting to get allotments back into the heart of community, they always used to seem much more of an individual affair, places where people would go to find sort of isolation. Typically the idea of an old man on his plot, that's completely changed. The new average plot holder is now a woman in her late 40s, early 50s, and with that comes a much greater community feel across the city sites, which is obviously something we want to encourage. I mean, the benefits for allotments are not just for food growing, but for the environment as well. The biodiversity on allotments are some of the most biodiverse places you'll find anywhere in the country. They're absolutely incredible the amount of species you'll find. We're trying to get some studies done, actually. I mean, they've even found like a rare beetle on allotment sites in Whitehawk that don't exist anywhere else. So they are very niche environments as well. And that's something we need to really encourage people to realise, those extra benefits to allotments, not just of growing food and for the obvious mental health benefits, the environmental benefits as well. Sometimes there seems to be a calculation done in councils up and down the country about how much they cost to run and how much money they bring in. And they don't take into account all the other financial benefits that they bring into the community, the wider community. We're actually trying to work with the University of Sussex at the moment to get some people to do some research into that, to actually try and put a financial value on those extra benefits, to make so that, because at the moment there's nothing there really. I mean, it's a difficult calculation to make, but there are obvious value benefits that aren't taken into consideration. Allotments are sometimes seen, not just by Brighton Council but other councils, as something that they'd really not like to deal with and offload. There's a big push towards privatising allotments and getting them self-managed and stuff, but we feel as if it should be much more at the heart of the community. So yeah.
Thanks, Mark. I just, Bryn, before we come to you, I'd just like to ask Mark a quick question, because I saw a fantastic video that was made last summer on one of the big allotment sites in Brighton, and it was really heartening to see that there were people who aren't white on those allotment sites growing some unusual veg. So speaking to Rosie's point about encouraging the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities to feel more welcome and be more involved, do you have any experience of how things have changed from the, like you said, the older man going to the plot for some solitude?
I mean, that some of them are still there, but there's which is great. Allotments mean different things to different people, and that's fine, but there's definitely been a big change in the demographic, and they are becoming more diverse places. There's more we can do, absolutely, and part of the allotment strategy that I mentioned before has a section about trying to increase that diversity and put work into that, but we are having trouble getting the allotment strategy delivered. It's a great document, but like I say, there's I think it's mainly due to the lack of resources within the council over the past few years have meant that they've had to focus on what they consider more important things. But we really are pushing now to try and get many of those aims implemented, and one of them is a push towards more diversity on sites. Absolutely.
Thanks, Mark. We're going to we've got some comments coming, and then we'll go to you, Bryn. I know you wanted to add something. From Lisa, I've tried to encourage my allotment site to allow groups on to share a plot, but they're reluctant as they're worried about the implications of more than one person being on the same plot due to insurance, etc. I've seen this happening with no problems on other sites. Maybe it should be made easier with guidance issued for sites that have received such requests but are reluctant. And from Steve, I've always liked the idea of dakas, small cabins on allotments where people could hang out and socialise as well as grow food. I don't know if I pronounced that right. And from Irene, with Brighton and Hove as a city of sanctuary, I wonder if any involvement and connections have been done with refugees in the city. Let's go to Bryn, because I know Bryn had a point, but you all might like to respond to those comments quickly.
Well, my point's quite quick. I was not going to add to anything anyone else said, although I agree with it all. But we work with a number of projects around the city, community orchards mostly. And our experience of new community orchards is that new local people get involved. And also our experience with running volunteering on and off during lockdown is that more and more, as Jess said, people living by themselves are particularly keen to get involved. But again, local. And I think the people are basically, I think the people who are missing out are the people who don't have enough projects local to them. And really, there's huge opportunities for trying to get more community gardens, more community orchards, all over the city in places where people haven't currently got access to them on their doorsteps.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to ask if anyone wants to respond to any of the comments, if you can remember them. And if not, then we'll move on to the next question. Let's do that. Which again speaks to Bryn's point about having access, easy access to projects on your doorstep. What things are working really well, and what do we need to expand, and what could be rolled out on a wider scale? Quite a big question there, but you might have some particular needs, or you've noticed some particular way that things could be improved. Jess. Jess, we can't hear you.
Oh,
there
okay.
we are.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah, in terms of what is working really well, the results of people getting involved in any project like this, I think they speak for themselves. I know, we struggle with people being referred to us, i.e. finding out about us and then coming along, and we struggle with people actually accessing our plot because we're at Stanmer Park. There's no public transport, and the new Stanmer Regeneration project is now putting in paid parking, and people will continue to struggle with access. So that's probably our biggest difficulty, and we need to address that. It's also tough for people who are struggling with mental health issues. Motivation is always a problem, and so if arriving at a project or accessing a project is a little bit fraught, then motivation is really hard to to drive up, in order to then catch a bus, where particularly during the pandemic there are safety concerns, and then walk 20 minutes to a project that you've never been to before. All of these things are a struggle for people. We're looking into working with the social prescribing networks and the befriending networks to bring in a sort of nature buddies scheme, where we will be asking for volunteers who really enjoy being out in nature to sort of come along with a person who's attending for the first time, so as to sort of give them familiarity with the route and how to access the project, to encourage them to persevere. And we believe that will have make a real difference to the issues that we struggle with. But in terms of when somebody actually gets particularly to our project, what I know about, it's it's unbelievable the effect it can have on people. When people garden in a social, therapeutic environment, miracles happen, changes people's lives on a weekly basis. And you know, I know that can roll out, you know, across many other urban growing and urban, you know, community growing and food projects. It just needs, we need the, you know, the public awareness of it. As Bryn says, we need more community projects. The Brighton and Hove obviously is very well served, but, you know, other areas need to be encouraged and supported in creating more of those projects. And just, you know, issues of transport and access to those projects is where, you know, we can, you know, put energy.
Thanks, Jess. Should we go to Rosie? So
Yeah,
what things are working really well and need to be expanded and scaled up?
Yeah, I think what is working really well is collaborating with other groups that are doing similar things. So, for example, there's the Surplus Food Network in Brighton, which my colleague at the Food Partnership, Helen, spoke about a few weeks ago on this forum. We've got the Green Wellbeing Alliance that I mentioned earlier, and practitioners that are doing similar things in the same space. We can help each other so much more when we work together, sharing risk assessments on, you know, COVID social distancing, or doing joint funding applications, or sending out messages to a whole network of, I've got a ton of potatoes, does anyone want them? So and it also it helps as a worker, it helps you with your own mental health as well. And like, I'm not the only one that's doing this, I'm not alone, other people are facing the same challenges, running groups, facilitating sessions as I am, and that's really helpful. And I think we've all missed working in team environments in the office. I certainly have. And I think that the more we collaborate, the better results we get for everyone, for ourselves and for the work that we do and the people that benefit from it as well.
Thanks, Rosie. Let's go to Bryn.
What's working well? Community orchards are working well. I mean, I am a little biased in that respect, but we've got a video actually. I was looking how I could share a link. I'm not sure I can, but I will. We can share it somehow or other, I'm sure. But we don't. Basically, I suppose it's my answer to the last one. But what's working well? We just need more of it. We need more projects to serve more people. We need, as Mark says, more allotments. And I think the assumption is that there is no space left in the city, but there are huge amounts of space in and on the edges of the city that we can use. We do a lot of work in local authority estates and the grassy spaces between low-rise buildings. There's huge areas of just mown grass, which are crying out to have something more interesting done with them. So yeah, we just need to get on and do more. There's the demand for it. There's the spaces to do it. We just need to do it.
Thanks, Bryn. Anything to add there, Mark?
Well, no, just well said. You walk around and, like Bryn says, how many times you see just bare grass in between buildings, and, you know, often on estates and stuff, though, they're in the places where there is the largest food poverty. I just think it's such a shame, such a waste of space, such short thinking. I mean, in those areas, if it wasn't community orchards, even polytunnels, large polytunnels can produce so much. I mean, it's incredible the amount of salad that can be pumped out of a large polytunnel, you know, and fresh green veg like that throughout the summer in some of these areas where there's just, like Bryn says, just a mown lawn. It just seems such a waste of space. We need to use those spaces to grow more food. It's blindingly obvious.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so last question. And just briefly, if you could change one thing to improve your work, what would it be? Let's go to Bryn.
I think I'm going to sound like a stuck record here, but well, I suppose the barriers to us helping more communities plant more orchards are.
Oh, we lost you.
Am I here still?
You're back.
Good. The obvious barriers are money, but and funding. But I think there are other things that we can look at, and we're hoping to do more work with our local authority here in Brighton and Hove and other local authorities about trying to get streamlined permissions and move from. As I said, there was a lot of demand out there, and to move from someone making a tentative inquiry, I'd like to plant some fruit trees or start a community garden or put up a polytunnel or whatever it happens to be, through to getting permission and making things happen. Obviously, there need to be restrictions to make sure that people don't just have lots of good ideas and then don't implement them or leave a mess. But I really think there's more that could be done to streamline the interest, going from interest through to achieving a project on the ground.
Thanks, Bryn. And Mark, if you could change one thing.
Well, speaking just from the Allotment Federation's point of view, it would be to have a more productive and relationship with the council. Really, it's as I said before, I think it's mainly due to cuts and a lack of resources that the money and the focus isn't there. But from our side, there's an upswell of grassroots energy and people wanting to grow and wanting to get involved, and we're constantly sort of lacking in the same sort of engagement from the council, which is a shame, and we're doing everything we can to try and improve that. But I think it's mainly due to resources and possibly maybe it might be a bit harsh, but a lack of imagination possibly, and a worry on their part of that freeing up or letting go of control of these spaces and allowing greater community engagement is I think a little bit worrying for them. But from our point of view, that's probably the thing that could improve our work.
Thanks, Mark. And Rosie.
In a dream scenario, unlimited funding would be so nice, and I'm sure everybody would agree with me who runs any kind of community growing project or any kind of related to food. I've had to turn down opportunities, gleaning, because there's just not the capacity. There's, we know the demand is there for community gardening and growing projects, but it often comes down to capacity and funding limitations. So that would be my one wish if I had it.
Thanks, and over to Jess.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. It's easy to just sort of go for, obviously funding for sure. I think changing the sort of local authority attitude towards the value of urban growing would be my shout on this. I think there needs to be a sort of a national drive, but then filtered down into a local authority, local council recognition that the value of urban growing is incredible. It's so much more than the one thing that you see it as, which is growing. It's so much more than just food. And if greater value were added to it on a sort of structural authority level, the funding would come. We can get funding from corporate, if the value was considered, especially with the use of land, then corporations could get involved and be donating and providing access to the land surrounding their offices or their workplaces. And I think that that could really change exactly what Bryn has been saying and Mark has been saying about that there is space, and people see wasted space and just grass places. Well, those spaces are owned by people. If the value of urban growing was being shouted from the rooftops, then the people who owned those spaces would be pressured to get involved and donate their land, and the rest would follow.
Thank you all. So we have some more comments coming. Let's see what people were saying. So from Charita, I hope you were able to continue and grow all of these projects after the pandemic. The need will still be here, don't we know that? We all need to get back to basics. We need to come together as an all-inclusive community. Thanks for that, Charita. From Lisa, if anyone has not heard of Social Farms and Gardens, have a look at our website. We're the UK's leading charity supporting community growing, care farming and community supported agriculture. We have a map on our website where you can search what growing groups what growing groups are in and around Brighton. We'd love more people to join. I used to manage a city farm, so I know your organisation very well. From Steve, thinking back to Dig for Victory, the campaign after the war, it showed what could be done to encourage local growing when the political will is there. How about a Hove for Health campaign? Oh, I love that, Steve. A Veg Roots campaign. I think Steve might have some more of those. Thank you for those comments, absolutely. Now we are, time is moving on. So there has been such an enormous food for thought there. I just want to thank you all for joining us today. We've really enjoyed having you here. We've loved your comments and your questions. I'd particularly like to thank our panel today. Mark Carroll from Brighton and Hove Allotments Federation, Bryn Thomas from Brighton Permaculture Trust, Jess Bayley from the Centre for Ecotherapy, and Rosie Linford from the Gleaning Network. Next Friday, 12th of March, we're going to explore this question further. What is urban growing good for? We'll be on Zoom, so we'll be really interactive. It'd be lovely to meet you all there. There'll be more examples of initiatives from Brighton and Hove and an invitation to get involved. And the information is up there on the screen. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. I hope to see you next Friday. And there will be a last live stream at the end of March. So look up the dates there for the events and do join us again.